Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and friends, today we gather to reflect on a man whose name is synonymous with courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice: Nelson Mandela. His life was a testament to the power of standing tall in the face of oppression, adversity, and injustice. Mandela once said, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way. But I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." His words remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Nelson Mandela's life was a powerful example of standing up for what is right, no matter the cost. In a world where injustice often prevails, Mandela refused to remain silent. He spoke out against the racial oppression of apartheid, a system that denied basic rights to millions of South Africans based on their skin color. Despite knowing that his defiance would lead to persecution, he chose to stand tall and resist. Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, and became a vocal advocate for equality and justice. His activism put him at great risk. He was arrested multiple times, banned from political activity, and eventually sentenced to life in prison. Yet, even behind bars, he did not abandon his principles. He continued to stand firm, using his time in prison to strengthen his resolve and inspire those fighting outside. Courage does not always mean grand, heroic acts. Sometimes it means standing firm in your beliefs, even when the world tries to silence you. Mandela's courage was not only in his defiance, but also in his endurance. He endured isolation, harsh treatment, and the loss of precious years with his family, yet he never wavered in his commitment to justice. This lesson applies to all of us. In our own lives, we may face situations where we must choose between comfort and what is right. It could be speaking up against discrimination at work, defending someone being treated unfairly, or challenging societal norms that perpetuate injustice. It is often easier to look the other way, to remain silent in the face of wrongdoing, but true courage lies in taking a stand, even when it is unpopular, even when it is risky. Mandela teaches us standing for what is right is not about immediate victories, but about the long-term fight for justice. It may take years, even decades, to see the results, but change is only possible when people dare to stand tall, as he did. One of the most remarkable aspects of Nelson Mandela's legacy is his ability to forgive. After spending 27 years in prison, losing precious time with his family, enduring isolation, and being treated as a criminal simply for demanding justice, many people expected him to seek revenge. Instead, he chose a different path. Mandela understood that bitterness and hatred would not heal a wounded nation. Only forgiveness and reconciliation could. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a sign of weakness, as if letting go of past wrongs means excusing them. But in reality, forgiveness requires immense strength. It means resisting the natural urge for retaliation and choosing instead to rise above the pain. When Mandela walked out of prison in 1990, he did so not with anger, but with a vision of unity. He knew that to build a new South Africa, he could not lead with resentment. He had to lead with understanding and reconciliation. One of the most powerful moments in Mandela's life was when he invited his former jailers to his presidential inauguration in 1994. This act sent a clear message: South Africa's future would not be built on vengeance, but on healing. By forgiving those who oppressed him, he demonstrated a strength of character that inspired people around the world. He knew that without forgiveness, the cycle of hatred and violence would continue indefinitely. Mandela's approach to forgiveness was not about forgetting the past. He never denied the suffering he endured, nor did he expect others to simply ignore the horrors of apartheid. Instead, he believed that acknowledging the pain while choosing to move forward was the only way to build a better society. This philosophy led to the creation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which allowed victims and perpetrators of apartheid era crimes to come forward, speak openly, and seek justice not through revenge, but through truth and understanding. This lesson is deeply relevant to our own lives. We all experience betrayal, injustice, and hurt, whether in personal relationships, workplaces, or society at large. It is easy to hold grudges and to let anger dictate our actions. But as Mandela showed, true power comes from breaking free of that anger and choosing a path of forgiveness. This does not mean allowing injustice to go unchallenged. It means finding a way to seek justice without being consumed by hatred. Forgiveness allows us to move forward. It frees us from the burden of resentment and opens the door to new possibilities. Whether in our families, communities, or nations, the ability to forgive can transform relationships and create a future built on hope rather than pain. Mandela's life teaches us that while we may not be able to change the past, we can choose how we respond to it. And by choosing forgiveness, we choose strength, wisdom, and the power to create a better world. Nelson Mandela's journey to freedom and justice was not a short or easy one. It was marked by decades of struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks. Yet, he never gave up. His unwavering persistence in the face of adversity is one of the greatest lessons we can learn from his life. He understood that true change does not happen overnight, and meaningful victories require patience, resilience, and the willingness to keep going, even when the odds seem insurmountable. From a young age, Mandela dedicated himself to fighting apartheid, a system of racial segregation that stripped black South Africans of their basic rights. His activism put him in constant danger. He was arrested multiple times, banned from political activity, and even forced to live in hiding. In 1962, he was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment. Many believed this would be the end of his fight, that locking him away would silence him. But Mandela refused to be broken. For 27 years, he remained behind bars, enduring harsh conditions on Robben Island. He was forced into hard labor, given minimal contact with the outside world, and deprived of basic freedoms. Yet, he never wavered in his belief that South Africa would one day be free. He continued to learn, to inspire, and to keep the dream of liberation alive. Instead of allowing his imprisonment to crush his spirit, he used it as a time to strengthen his mind and prepare for the day he would walk free. Even after his release in 1990, Mandela's persistence did not wane. The struggle for democracy was far from over. South Africa was on the brink of civil war, and tensions were at an all-time high. Negotiating a peaceful transition was one of the most difficult tasks he faced. There were countless moments when it seemed that his dream of a united South Africa might crumble, but he refused to lose hope. He worked tirelessly to bring together opposing sides, convincing both his allies and former enemies that the only way forward was through peace and cooperation. His persistence ultimately led to the first democratic elections in South African history in 1994. Against all odds, he became the country's first black president, a moment that symbolized not just his personal victory, but the triumph of an entire people who had fought against oppression for generations. Mandela's story is proof that persistence is the key to overcoming even the most overwhelming challenges. There were many points along the way where he could have surrendered: when he was sentenced to life in prison, when negotiations became impossible, when violence threatened to tear the country apart. But he never did. He kept moving forward, step by step, until his vision of a free and just South Africa became a reality. In our own lives, we all face struggles, whether in our careers, relationships, or personal ambitions. We will encounter setbacks, disappointments, and moments when we feel like giving up. But Mandela teaches us that persistence is what separates those who succeed from those who fail. No great achievement comes easily, and no meaningful change happens without perseverance. His life reminds us that the road to victory is long and difficult, but those who refuse to quit, who push forward despite adversity, will eventually reach a destination. It is not the obstacles we face that define us, but the way we respond to them. By embracing persistence, we open the door to the possibility of success, no matter how impossible it may seem at the start. One of the most defining qualities of Nelson Mandela's leadership was his humility. Despite being a global icon, a revolutionary, and a symbol of freedom, he never saw himself as above others. He understood that true leadership is not about power or personal glory, but about service, listening, and lifting others up. His humility was not a weakness, it was his greatest strength. Mandela's leadership style was rooted in the belief that no single individual has all the answers. Even as the face of South Africa's liberation movement, he never acted as if he alone could bring change. He surrounded himself with wise advisors, valued the opinions of those around him, and encouraged open dialogue. He listened carefully to both friends and opponents, understanding that leadership requires the ability to hear different perspectives, even from those who disagree with you. His humility was evident in his approach to power. When he became South Africa's first democratically elected president in 1994, he had every reason to hold on to the position indefinitely. Many leaders in history have clung to power, believing that they alone can guide their nation. But Mandela was different. He chose to serve only one term, stepping down in 1999 despite widespread admiration and calls for him to continue leading. He knew that leadership was not about staying in office forever, but about laying the foundation for future generations to lead. Mandela's humility was also reflected in how he treated others. He never saw himself as superior, even to those who had once oppressed him. He famously invited his former jailer to his presidential inauguration, a gesture that showed not just forgiveness, but also the deep understanding that every person, regardless of their past, deserves dignity and respect. He treated his political opponents with kindness, proving that leadership is not about crushing your enemies, but about uniting people under a common cause. Another powerful example of Mandela's humility was his ability to admit mistakes. Many leaders refuse to acknowledge their failures, fearing it will make them look weak. But Mandela was different. He openly admitted when he was wrong and was willing to change course when necessary. This willingness to learn and grow made him an even stronger leader because it showed that he prioritized the well-being of his people over his own ego. Mandela's humility extended beyond politics. Despite being one of the most celebrated figures in modern history, he remained down to earth. He often reminded people that he was not a saint or a perfect person, but simply a man who had made many mistakes and learned from them. He did not seek special treatment or privileges. He once joked, "I am not a messiah, but an ordinary man who had become a leader because of extraordinary circumstances." This humility made him even more respected because people could see that his leadership came from sincerity rather than a desire for personal gain. In our own lives, Mandela's example teaches us that leadership is not about dominance, titles, or recognition. Whether we are leading a company, a team, a family, or a community, true leadership comes from serving others, listening, and being willing to learn. The best leaders are those who do not seek power for themselves, but use their influence to uplift those around them. Mandela's humility is a reminder that greatness does not come from placing yourself above others, but from walking beside them, guiding with wisdom, and leading by example. True leadership is about inspiring people to believe in themselves, to work together, and to build a future that is not dependent on one person, but on the collective strength of many. Nelson Mandela firmly believed that education was the key to personal growth, societal transformation, and national progress. He once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." This was not just a statement, it was a philosophy that guided his life and leadership. Throughout his journey, he demonstrated how knowledge empowers individuals, breaks the chains of oppression, and builds a better future for all. Mandela's own life was a testament to the power of education. Born in a rural village in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, he was one of the few black children of his generation who had the opportunity to attend school. He quickly understood that knowledge provided opportunities that were otherwise denied to people of his background. Despite the racial inequalities of the education system under apartheid, he remained determined to learn. His time at the University of Fort Hare and later studying law shaped his understanding of justice, human rights, and governance. Education gave him the tools to fight against oppression not through violence, but through intellect and strategy. Even when he was imprisoned for 27 years on Robben Island, Mandela continued to stress the importance of education. He turned the prison into what was later called the Robben Island University, where inmates taught one another, shared books, and engaged in political discussions. He believed that while they were physically confined, their minds could still be free. He encouraged fellow prisoners to study, to read, and to think critically about the world. This act of resilience showed that even in the darkest circumstances, education could be a source of strength and hope. Mandela's belief in education extended beyond his own learning. When he became South Africa's first black president, he made it a priority to reform the education system, which had long been used as a tool of oppression. Under apartheid, black South Africans received inferior education designed to keep them in low-paying jobs and prevent social mobility. Mandela worked to change this, pushing for policies that would make quality education accessible to all, regardless of race or economic background. He understood that if the new South Africa was to succeed, it needed educated leaders, doctors, teachers, engineers, and citizens who could build a thriving nation. Beyond South Africa, Mandela advocated for global education initiatives. He worked with organizations like UNICEF and the Nelson Mandela Foundation to promote literacy, early childhood education, and scholarship programs for disadvantaged students. He believed that no child should be denied the right to learn simply because of their circumstances. His legacy lives on in countless educational programs that continue to empower young people worldwide. The lesson Mandela teaches us is clear. Education is not just about gaining knowledge, it is about empowerment. It gives people the ability to think independently, to challenge injustice, and to create opportunities for themselves and others. It is the foundation upon which progress is built. In our own lives, this lesson is more relevant than ever. In an age of rapid technological advancements and complex global challenges, education remains the most effective tool for success. Whether formal schooling, self-education, or lifelong learning, the pursuit of knowledge equips us with the skills and wisdom needed to make a difference. Mandela's words remind us that education is a responsibility we all share. Parents must prioritize their children's learning. Governments must invest in quality education. Individuals must seek knowledge not just for personal gain, but for the betterment of society. When we educate ourselves and others, we create a world where people are empowered to solve problems, break barriers, and achieve greatness. Nelson Mandela understood that a divided nation could not thrive. He had witnessed firsthand how apartheid had torn South Africa apart, creating deep racial and economic divisions that fueled hatred, violence, and suffering. Yet, despite the immense pain and injustice he had endured, he chose to work toward unity rather than revenge. He knew that only by bringing people together across racial, political, and social lines could South Africa heal and move forward. His ability to unite people, even those who once saw each other as enemies, is one of the most powerful lessons he left behind. Mandela's commitment to unity was evident in the way he approached the transition from apartheid to democracy. After his release from prison in 1990, South Africa stood on the brink of civil war. Decades of racial oppression had left deep wounds, and many black South Africans, understandably, wanted retribution against those who had upheld the apartheid regime. At the same time, many white South Africans feared losing their place in the new society. Mandela recognized these tensions and knew that without unity, the dream of a free and just South Africa would collapse before it could begin. Instead of using his newfound power to punish his former oppressors, Mandela chose reconciliation. He extended a hand to those who had once imprisoned him and oppressed his people. He invited former apartheid leaders to work with him in building a new South Africa. He emphasized forgiveness, mutual understanding, and cooperation, rather than division and retaliation. This decision was not easy. Many of his supporters felt betrayed, believing that justice required harsher consequences for those who had upheld apartheid. But Mandela saw the bigger picture. Lasting peace could only be achieved through unity. One of the most famous symbols of Mandela's commitment to unity was his support for the South African national rugby team, the Springboks. For decades, the team had been a symbol of white South African pride, while black South Africans saw it as a reminder of their oppression. But during the 1995 Rugby World Cup, held in South Africa, Mandela saw an opportunity to unite the country. Against the expectations of many, he publicly supported the team, even wearing a Springbok jersey during the final match. This simple but powerful gesture sent a message that South Africa was no longer a country of us versus them but one nation, united under a shared identity. When South Africa won the World Cup, the entire nation, black and white, celebrated together, marking a turning point in the country's journey toward unity. Mandela also understood that unity did not mean ignoring the past or pretending that differences did not exist. True unity required acknowledging the pain and injustices of history while committing to a shared future. This was why he supported the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, a groundbreaking effort to bring victims and perpetrators of apartheid-era crimes together to share their experiences and seek justice through truth, not revenge. The track allowed South Africans to face their painful past honestly while working toward a more just and united future. The lesson Mandela teaches us is that unity is not about forcing people to think the same way or erasing differences. Instead, it is about finding common ground, embracing diversity, and working together despite differences. It is about understanding that division only weakens us, while unity gives us the strength to overcome even the most difficult challenges. In today's world, this lesson is more relevant than ever. We see division in politics, in communities, and even in families. People are quick to label each other as enemies, choosing conflict over conversation, hatred over understanding. But Mandela's example reminds us that real leadership and progress come from bringing people together, not driving them apart. If we want to build stronger communities, workplaces, and nations, we must choose unity over division. We must be willing to listen to those with different perspectives, to find solutions that benefit all, and to recognize that Despite our differences, we share a common humanity. Mandela proved that unity is not just a dream, it is a choice, a commitment, and the most powerful force for change. Nelson Mandela's life was defined by sacrifice. He gave up personal comfort, family life, and even his freedom for the greater good of his people and his country. His story is a powerful reminder that true progress, whether in our personal lives, communities, or nations, often requires deep sacrifice. He understood that meaningful change does not come easily, it demands perseverance, selflessness, and an unwavering commitment to a cause greater than oneself. Mandela's journey of sacrifice began early in his life. Born into a traditional royal family, he could have chosen a comfortable path, avoiding conflict and living a life of privilege. Instead, he chose to fight against the injustice of apartheid, knowing that this decision would come with serious consequences. He left his home and gave up the security of his family's protection to join the African National Congress, ANC, dedicating his life to the struggle for freedom and equality. As his activism grew, so did the risks. Mandela was arrested multiple times for his involvement in anti-apartheid movements, facing threats, surveillance, and persecution by the South African government. But perhaps the greatest sacrifice of his life came in 1964, when he was sentenced to life in prison. At the Rivonia trial, where he was facing the death penalty, he gave a speech that would define his legacy. He famously declared, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way. But I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I have come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended." With those words, he made it clear that he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his life, for the dream of a free and equal South Africa. He spent the next 27 years in prison, separated from his wife, his children, and the life he had once known. He endured harsh conditions, grueling labor, and isolation, but he never abandoned his mission. He knew that his suffering was part of a larger struggle, and he accepted it with unwavering determination. Even after his release in 1990, Mandela's sacrifices did not end. When he was elected South Africa's first black president in 1994, he faced the enormous task of leading a country that was still deeply divided by racism and inequality. He could have chosen to rule with an iron fist, taking revenge on those who had oppressed his people for so long. Instead, he sacrificed personal emotions for the sake of national unity. He worked with former enemies, forgave those who had wronged him, and focused on reconciliation rather than revenge. Mandela's sacrifices were not only political but also personal. Throughout his life, he paid a heavy price for his commitment to justice. His long imprisonment meant missing out on watching his children grow up, being with his family in times of need, and living a normal life. His marriage to Winnie Mandela suffered under the pressures of his political struggle. Yet, he never wavered. He understood that leadership and progress often required giving up personal happiness for the greater good. The lesson Mandela teaches us is that sacrifice is not just about grand gestures, it is about the everyday choices we make in pursuit of something greater than ourselves. It is about choosing principle over comfort, standing firm in the face of adversity, and being willing to endure hardship for the sake of a better future. In today's world, this lesson remains deeply relevant. Many of the greatest achievements in history, civil rights, gender equality, democracy, and social justice, were won through sacrifice. Every great leader, activist, and visionary has had to give up something valuable to achieve progress. Even in our own lives, whether we are striving for personal success, working to improve our communities, or fighting for a cause we believe in, we must be willing to sacrifice time, comfort, and sometimes even relationships to make a real impact. Mandela's life reminds us that true change does not come easily. It requires dedication, resilience, and the willingness to make difficult choices. Those who are willing to pay the price of sacrifice are the ones who ultimately shape the future, leaving behind a legacy that inspires generations to come. Nelson Mandela's life is a testament to the power of resilience, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment to justice. His lessons standing tall in the face of adversity, embracing humility, persisting despite obstacles, valuing education, uniting rather than dividing, and understanding the price of sacrifice continue to inspire the world today. Mandela showed us that leadership is not about power, but about service. He taught us that true strength lies not in retaliation, but in reconciliation. He proved that even the darkest of times can lead to a brighter future if we refuse to give up. As we reflect on his lessons, we must ask ourselves, how can we apply these principles in our own lives? Whether in our communities, workplaces, or personal journeys, we have the ability to create change, to uplift others, and to stand firm for what is right. Mandela's long walk to freedom may have ended, but ours continues. It is now up to us to carry forward his vision, a world where justice, equality, and compassion triumph over hatred and division. Let us stand tall, just as he did, and commit to making the world a better place for future generations.